Helena sat at the end of the long dining table, her hands resting quietly on her lap as laughter drifted around the room. It was Damion's 42nd birthday, and his house overflowed with guests, wine, and warm yellow lights. When her son tapped his glass, everyone turned toward him. He smiled proudly, adjusting his crisp white shirt. Then he said, as casually as someone commenting on the weather, "Some people are important, and others just take up space." His eyes settled on Helena. The room laughed with him, unaware or unconcerned about the wound his words carved into her heart. Helena didn't flinch. She simply held her glass and watched him. The laughter wasn't uncomfortable. It was shared, almost coordinated. Damion's wife, Clarice, covered her mouth as if trying to hide her amusement, but her sparkling eyes betrayed her. The cousins chuckled. Aunt Rena lowered her gaze but still smiled. Helena kept her silence. Not a tear, not a tremble, not even a lowered gaze. Only a quiet inhale. Inside her chest, something cold and sharp tightened, not from shame but from a controlled anger that demanded strength, not noise, as Damion continued his speech confidently. Damion raised his glass again. "Let's be real," he said lightly. "Some people add value and some, well, you know." More laughter. Someone clinked glasses. Another joke back. But Helena wasn't listening to their words. She was hearing echoes of the past. She remembered Damion at age 5, crying in the night with a fever. She had stayed awake, cooling his forehead, praying he wouldn't get worse. There was no doctor money then. Only her hands, her fear, and her love. And now the same boy stood there, mocking her existence as if she were an inconvenience. She remembered when Damion came home at 12 with a torn shirt and a bruised eye. He threw his backpack down and sobbed, saying the boys at school had cornered him. Helena held him close, whispering, "You are stronger than today. You will rise again." She patched his shirt, wiped his tears, and made him his favorite soup, though she had barely any ingredients left. She remembered every sacrifice she made during those years, not because she wanted recognition, but because she loved him fiercely. And yet now, he treated her as if she contributed nothing at all. When he turned 17, he said he wanted to go to college. Helena had smiled and said, "We'll make it happen." She didn't know how, but she promised. And she kept that promise. 2 years of double shifts. Selling her mother's jewelry. Giving up her furniture. Saving every spare coin. Every step of his success started with her hands. And now here he was, in the house she helped him build, literally with the first $1,000 she scraped by cleaning houses, telling everyone she only took up space. Helena breathed deeply, letting the cold, still anger settle in her. The room buzzed with conversation again. Music rose softly in the background. Plates clattered. People joked. Helena sat in silence. No one noticed her. Or maybe they had long gotten used to ignoring her. She placed her glass gently on the table. Then she stood up, not abruptly, not dramatically, just slowly and firmly. The whole room quieted. Damion paused mid-laugh and turned to her with mild confusion. He hadn't expected a response. Helena breathed in and said gently, "You're right, Damion. Some people are important and some just take up space." He frowned slightly. "Mom, what are you?" Helena raised her hand softly, stopping him. "It's good you mentioned it tonight," she continued. The guests looked back and forth between mother and son. "Because I just bought my own house. 2,000 miles from here. Papers signed. Keys in my purse." The air tightened instantly. No laughter. No easy smiles. Just the soundless shock of people realizing they had pushed too far. Clarice's smile vanished. Damion blinked rapidly, as if the words didn't make sense. Helena stood straighter, her voice calm. "You won't have to worry about me anymore." Helena picked up her purse. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She simply said, "I'm leaving. For good." Then she turned and walked toward the door. Her footsteps echoed across the shiny floor. No one followed. No one dared to ask her to stay. When she closed the door behind her, the cold air met her skin, but she only felt relief. She walked toward the car, Damion's car, and started it. As she drove through streets she knew well, streets where she had raised him, she felt a realization rising within her. She hadn't just taken up space, she had built it. Helena drove for 20 minutes with no destination. The night streets were wet and quiet. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from freedom. A weight she had carried for decades began fading. She stopped near a park she often visited when Damion was a child. She turned off the engine and watched the empty swings sway in the wind. She remembered teaching him to ride a bike there, how he'd fallen, cried, and how she'd told him courage mattered more than pain. As she watched the park now, a flood of years washed over her. She cried. The kind of tears that don't come from one hurtful night, but from years of swallowing pain. Tears for every time she'd made herself small to keep the peace. Tears for every moment she'd stayed silent to avoid conflict. Tears for the loneliness she had lived inside a house she no longer recognized as hers. But when the tears stopped, a clarity settled. The same clarity she had felt 3 months ago, when the plan for her escape first began. Tonight didn't push her. It simply triggered what was already prepared. 3 months earlier, her distant cousin Mirella had called from a quiet coastal town. A neighbor of mine is selling her house, she said. 2 bedrooms, a small garden, front porch, very peaceful. Mirella sent pictures. Helena stared at them for hours. The house wasn't luxurious. It didn't shine like Damion's marble floors. But it had sunlight, quiet, and enough space for one heart to breathe. How much? Helena had asked. 60,000, Mirella answered. Helena knew she didn't have that much yet, but she also knew she would get it. She had $42,000 saved from years of secret hustles. Sewing for neighbors, baking cakes, taking odd jobs Damion never knew about. She didn't tell anyone her plan. She didn't ask for permission. She simply started selling what little she owned of value. Her mother's gold ring. Her grandmother's antique china. Furniture she kept tucked in the storage room she slept in. More like a closet than a bedroom. No one noticed the items disappearing. No one asked questions. To them, Helena was invisible. And for the first time, her invisibility helped her. In 2 months, she reached the full $60,000. She called Mirella and said, "Tell the owner I'm ready." The paperwork was done online at night, with Helena hunched over the kitchen table. Lights off so no one would interrupt. 1 week ago the keys arrived in the mail. She hid them in her purse and touched them daily, each time whispering in her mind, "My place." She didn't plan to leave immediately. But when Damion delivered that cruel toast, she knew the moment had come. Not out of anger, but out of finally choosing herself. She drove to a small motel that night. Paid for 1 night. Climbed into the room. When she checked her phone, she found 15 missed calls, 12 from Damion, 3 from Clarice. None said, "I'm sorry." Every message said, "Come back, we need to talk, you misunderstood." Helena turned off the phone and lay on the bed. For the first time in years she slept without feeling. Like she was in someone else's way. Without tiptoeing, without apologizing for existing. She slept like someone who had just crossed a line she'd never return behind. The next morning, sunlight filtered through thin curtains. Helena showered, dressed, and went downstairs for breakfast. She sipped hot coffee slowly, savoring it. She watched families chat around her. She didn't feel lonely. She felt new. When she turned on her phone again, she found more messages. Curiosity, shock, instruction. One from Damion read, "Mom, stop this. Come home. We'll sort it out." Sort it out. As if she were a scheduling issue. She ignored it. She only replied to one message, Mirella's, with a simple line. "I'll arrive in 3 days." She spent the day packing her things at the motel. Her entire life fit into 4 boxes. Clothes, a few worn books, old photos she couldn't throw away, a handmade blanket, and her grandmother's rosary. That was everything. None of the furniture in Damion's house belonged to her. Not the plates. Not the bed. Not even the car. Just 4 boxes and the deed to her new life. She called a small moving company. It's only 4 boxes, she explained. The man sounded surprised but didn't ask questions. We'll be there tomorrow at 8. That night, Helena lay awake, feeling the quiet of release. She thought of Damion, the sweet child he once was and the cold man he had become. She wondered when the shift happened. When love turned into expectation. When sacrifice became invisible. When her presence became a burden. She had no answers. But she knew one thing. Going back meant dying slowly. Leaving meant breathing again. And she was choosing breath. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "I'm doing the right thing." The next morning arrived with a heavy sense of finality. Helena dressed carefully, almost ceremonially. Her clothes felt like armor. At 8 sharp, the movers arrived and carried her 4 boxes like fragile treasures. She gave them the address of her new home. "It'll take 4 days," they said. She nodded and paid the deposit. Every dollar leaving her hand hurt, but every dollar was also a step toward freedom. When the truck drove away, carrying everything she owned, Helena whispered, "Go. I'm right behind you." She walked to the bus station. No car because the car was Damion's too. She bought a bus ticket for the next morning. $530 for a 2-day trip. She didn't mind. She wanted the long journey. She needed the distance. She returned to the motel and spent the rest of the day sitting quietly, absorbing the reality of her decision. When she turned on her phone again, there was another message from Damion. "Mom, this is ridiculous. Come home." She stared at the word home. She realized she had not truly had one in years. That night, she washed her face and stared at her reflection. A 67-year-old woman with tired eyes, gray strands of hair, and hands worn from labor. But she also saw strength. A quiet strength that had slept too long. She touched the mirror gently and whispered, "You're almost there." She saved those words in her phone as a note to herself, not to anyone else. Later, she lay down and imagined her new house. The porch, the garden, the sunlight. And for the first time in decades, the future didn't frighten her. It welcomed her. Helena woke up before dawn. She dressed quietly, her body moving with a calm certainty she had never felt before. When she stepped outside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of morning rain. She walked to the bus station, watching the city slowly come alive. Street vendors opened their stalls. A man arranged fruits carefully. A woman stirred a pot of steaming porridge. Life was happening around her, ordinary and unbothered. She reached the station, sat on a metal bench, and waited silently. She wasn't running away anymore. She was going toward something new. The bus arrived at exactly 7 a.m. Helena climbed in and found her seat by the window. She placed her purse on her lap and exhaled deeply when the bus began to move. As the city faded in the distance, she didn't feel fear. She didn't feel regret. She felt something gentle and unfamiliar, hope. She leaned her head against the glass and let the hum of the engine soothe her. The streets she once knew disappeared behind her, growing smaller until they became part of her past. This time she didn't look back. As the bus rolled along the highway, Helena closed her eyes and allowed memories to surface. Memories she hadn't touched in years. She remembered the day Damion was born, the tiny cry, the soft blanket she had sewn by hand, and the overwhelming love she felt. She remembered the day his father left, a short note left on the table. She remembered holding her baby tightly, promising him he would never feel abandoned. She remembered working tirelessly, doing whatever job she could find. Her hands cracked and tired but always steady. She had given him her entire life. She thought about her younger self, 25 years old, alone, terrified but determined. She had carried Damion everywhere, to work, to the market, to neighbors when she needed help. She remembered mending his clothes late into the night by candlelight. She remembered saving coins in a jar hidden under her bed. She remembered dreaming of giving him a future better than hers. And she had. Every achievement he bragged about traced back to her sacrifices. Yet he had forgotten all of it. No, she whispered to herself. He chose not to remember. At noon, the bus stopped at a roadside restaurant. Passengers stepped out to eat and stretch. Helena ordered a small bowl of soup and sat alone at a corner table. A middle-aged woman approached and asked, "Is this seat taken?" Helena shook her head. The woman sat and smiled warmly. "Traveling far?" "Yes," Helena replied softly. "Leaving or returning?" the woman asked. Helena hesitated before answering. "Leaving, and beginning again." The woman nodded knowingly. Sometimes that's the bravest thing a person can do. Helena swallowed hard. This stranger's words felt like a blessing. Back on the bus, Helena watched the landscape change from city buildings to fields, then to open stretches of road. Her phone buzzed again. She hesitated before looking. More messages. Damion, Clarice, cousins. She opened one from Damion. "Mom, I didn't mean it like that. You're overreacting. Come back so we can talk." She closed the message. His words weren't an apology. It was an instruction. Command. A dismissal of her pain. She finally turned off her phone completely, placed it in her purse, and pressed her forehead against the window. She was done explaining herself that evening. The bus stopped at a small town where passengers would rest for the night. Helena checked into a modest hotel nearby. The receptionist, a gentle woman with kind eyes, handed her a key and said, "Safe travels, ma'am." Helena nodded and headed to her room. She placed her purse on the table and sat on the bed. The quietness in the room felt like a soft blanket. She took a long breath and whispered, "One more day." She felt tired, but it was a satisfying tiredness, the kind that comes from moving toward freedom. She lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Thoughts of Damion crept back in. Not the cruel version from the birthday dinner, but the little boy who used to run to her after school with drawings made just for her. "Look, Mama, I made this for you," he used to say. She kept those drawings for years. But as he grew older, the drawings became distant greetings, then short messages, then nothing at all. Helena wondered when he had stopped seeing her as a mother and started seeing her as an obligation. The truth stung deeply. The next morning, Helena boarded the bus again. Only one more stretch remained before she reached her new life. As the bus moved, she thought about something Marella had once said. "Peace is worth more than gold." Helena understood that now. Peace had been missing from her life for too long. She imagined waking up in her own house, drinking coffee on her porch, planting flowers in the small garden, hearing nothing but birds and wind. She imagined a place where she did not need to apologize for existing. The thought warmed her chest. Around midday, Marella called. Helena finally turned her phone back on. "Are you close?" Marella asked, excitement in her voice. "By tomorrow morning," Helena replied. Marella laughed softly. "I can't wait to see you. You deserve this, Helena. You deserve rest." Helena's throat tightened. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." "No," Marella said gently. "For choosing yourself. That's the hardest part." The call ended, but Helena held the phone to her chest for a moment, letting those words soak into the parts of her heart that had long been ignored. The bus reached the coastal town just after sunrise the next day. Helena stepped off, carrying her purse and a deep breath. The air smelled of salt and fresh morning breeze. Marella was waiting near the station, waving with both arms. "Helena!" she shouted. They hugged tightly. "You're finally here," Marella said, pulling back to look at her. "Welcome home." The word home hit Helena with a strange, warm heaviness. She hadn't heard that word spoken to her like that in years. For a moment she couldn't speak. She only smiled. Marella drove her to the house. The road was quiet, lined with palm trees and small shops. When they turned onto a narrow street, Helena saw it. The little beige house with blue shutters, a small garden in front, and a wooden porch with 2 steps. It wasn't big. It wasn't fancy. But it was hers. Completely hers. Marella parked the car. "Go ahead," she encouraged softly. Helena walked slowly toward the door. Her hands trembled as she took out the keys. She unlocked the door and stepped inside, breathing in the scent of fresh paint and possibility. The living room was small but filled with light. She walked through each room slowly. The tiny kitchen, the bedroom with a window facing the garden, the second bedroom she planned to turn into a sewing room. She touched the walls gently, as if greeting them. "This is mine," she whispered. Marella placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did this, Helena." Tears filled Helena's eyes, but they were different from the tears she'd cried before. These tears didn't hurt. They cleansed. They healed. She felt something inside her settling for the first time in decades. Later that day, the moving truck arrived with her 4 boxes. The workers carried them in, placed them by the living room wall, and left. Helena and Marella unpacked together. They folded clothes, placed books on shelves, hung the blanket at the foot of her bed. It didn't take long, she didn't own much, but every item placed inside the house felt like planting a seed. When they finished, Marella said, "Let's sit on the porch." They stepped outside, sitting side by side. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm orange glow over everything. As they watched the sky change colors, Helena whispered, "I feel peaceful." Marella smiled. "Peaceful looks good on you." Helena chuckled softly. She hadn't laughed in a long time, not like this. Not freely. Marella nudged her shoulder gently. "You can build something beautiful here." Helena nodded. She believed it. She felt it. The world looked different from this porch. Bigger, softer, kinder. For once in her life, she wasn't the end of the table. She wasn't the shadow in someone else's home. She was a woman with her own space. That evening, Helena's phone buzzed again. Dozens of messages from Damion. He wrote things like, "Mom, this is embarrassing. People are talking. And you need to come back. We need to fix this." Helena read them slowly. Not a single message said, "I'm sorry I hurt you," or "I was wrong." It was all about how her absence affected him. She set the phone down without replying. Marella looked at her gently. "You don't owe him your suffering." Helena nodded. For the first time she believed it. The next morning, Helena woke up early and stepped onto her porch with a cup of tea. The street was quiet, the air cool. Birds chirped in the trees. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She felt lighter. She sat on the porch bench and whispered, "This is my beginning." She spent the day cleaning, organizing, and arranging her new space. Each action felt symbolic, like reclaiming pieces of herself. When she swept the floor, she imagined sweeping out years of hurt. When she opened the windows, she imagined letting new light into her soul. In the afternoon, a neighbor named Lourdes stopped by with a basket of fresh bread. "You must be the new owner," she said kindly. Helena smiled shyly. "Yes, I'm Helena. Welcome to the neighborhood," Lourdes said. "If you need anything at all, we're right across the street." Helena thanked her warmly. After Lourdes left, Helena stood inside her living room clutching the warm bread, overwhelmed by the simple kindness. She whispered, "This is what life should feel like." That evening, Helena finally sat down and opened her phone again. She scrolled through Damion's messages. Not with pain but with clarity. She typed slowly, choosing each word carefully. "Damion, I love you. But I'm choosing myself now. I won't return to a place where I'm disrespected. Take care of your life. I will live mine." She read the message twice, then pressed send. It felt like closing a door gently but firmly. Not with anger, just with truth. When she set the phone down, Helena stepped outside once more. The sun was setting behind the rooftops, painting the sky pink and gold. She wrapped her arms around herself and breathed in deeply. She felt the cool breeze brush against her skin, felt the warmth of her new home behind her, felt the quiet strength rising in her chest. She had left everything she knew. She had walked away from the table that had erased her. And now, standing on her own porch, Helena finally understood something. She had not lost a family, she had reclaimed herself.